to give you a sustainable competitive advantage. So again, let me welcome you to today's webinar, Success Requires the Right Strategy, Culture, and Leadership. Feel free to write your questions as we proceed. I'll try to answer them as we go along. Also, you can ask them at the end. There'll be time for that, etc. So we look forward to working with you. So let's begin. The issue that for most people have is the understanding of how do these things work together? How do you deal with corporate standards for job performance, for alignment of people, your overall mission that you have for your company, which is really the achievement of all of the goals, etc. And so I want to do is start off by trying to define a few terms to help people go through it. Strategy, as we're going to see, is really a means to an end for the company to achieve the mission and the vision that it has. Within that, everybody has to pull their weight, do their thing. In other words, each person's going to have a strategic job performance. And those are the activities that each employee performs to accomplish his share of it. So think of a baseball team. The pitcher doesn't do the same thing as a third baseman or the left fielder. Catcher does something different. When they're switching roles and wearing and becoming hitters, they're doing something different than fielding. Each of those elements that, let's say, a first baseman may have are all of their strategic job performance, which are part of what the corporation has to think through as a standard. What do we want them to do? Do we want them to be able to, for example, catch the ball and catch a runner who's going from home base to first base and get them out at that time? That's an activity. Obviously, our goal as a standard is to make sure it's clear so we can help people, and that's really going to be today's focus within the strategy, culture, and leadership, helping people achieve their best that they can to achieve those goals. Cultural alignment means working together. I'm using baseball today as an example because I had a conversation this morning with some leaders about this. Many years ago, the Yankees had the best teams money can buy, but still couldn't win the World Series. They still couldn't even make it sometimes to the finals. Why? Because everyone was a kind of a prima donna focusing on getting their own best siloed skills and traits and performance within what they do. I'm the best first baseman in the world, but I'm not really aligned with the team, which is really not about stopping people at first base, but making sure that whatever it takes, no one scores a run. And being able to move quickly to do that, to be able to sacrifice maybe a hit for just being able to take a walk sometimes is what you need. So it's alignment around the cultural goals that everyone has in the company. And therefore, our goal ultimately is to work together and produce something we call a sustainable competitive advantage. And next week, we'll talk about how that differs from a tactical competitive advantage. In other words, today I'm a little cheaper than you are, but tomorrow I won't be, because you can figure out how to replicate what I'm doing and produce what we call a commanding strategy, which makes all the difference in the world. And all together you put it. So our goal is really understanding how we put together strategy, leadership, and culture to be able to align people around all of those elements for performance. And so one of the ways of looking at it is a pyramid. There are three parts. We want to make sure everyone knows what the strategy is. We want people to know what the culture is and align them around the culture. Everyone knowing the strategy, as I said, means they know how their particular behaviors fit into the larger picture. And then constantly, as leaders of the company, focus on talent development. How do we find the right people to be able to achieve the goals we need for a sustainable culture that's encouraging people to do the right jobs, work together as a team, and produce the ultimate mission and vision of the company. It's only when these three parts are together that you can really achieve the success you want, and that's why it's very often referred to as the profitability pyramid, looking at how we put it all together. Why is it such a big issue? Well, the problem is most of the people, when I speak to them and they call us in from Presentation Excellence Group as consultants, is because they recognize they have silos, everybody working in their own domain. The salespeople are focusing on selling next week's products, Marketing is focusing on trying to get more people to buy possibly these products or the one after. And customer service is trying to figure out how to put out buyers as opposed to making sure people are ecstatic about the service. Think about the excellence that we see in Zappos when we talk about a culture where they're willing to train people to have this culture of making it fun and making it seamless and making it painless to get anything you want. So you can buy 28 shoes and return 27 out of 28 and feel great about it. That whole approach is success. The problem for most people is that the silos focus only on the issues within that silo. So sales isn't checking where is marketing really putting its emphasis. The second part is they're not sure what the cultural norms and values are. And we're going to spend time on how important that is as a critical part. And as a result, as Peter Drucker said, the culture, which isn't focused on alignment around those mission and vision of the companies, is actually falling apart. And so you produce the picture you have on the bottom, everybody and every department kind of working in its own direction. Worse than that, sometimes working against one another. That's the typical challenge that a leader has and has to work. I teach, as you know, business strategy at CUNY and to entrepreneurship and marketing now in China. And one of the issues that I'm constantly trying to raise people is we take a look at companies who are succeeding and failing, and those failures very often are people who've forgotten how to make sure everyone knows their contribution to strategic performance and aligning people together to do it. And so what happens is when you have companies like Sprint, Nextel, it takes them almost 5 years to overcome the resistances to creating one single excellent culture. And this is a big issue that we have to deal with. So what's the solution? It's a leadership issue. Leaders have to recognize that's their unique control, their unique contribution, helping guide people. So they need to ask, what are the strategic priorities for the company? What are the things we need to do today that will make a difference to our customers, to our investors who are focusing on making sure that we have a growing stock price, to our market partners who are working and helping us work within the sphere of economic marketing that's going to take place and where we fit into that larger picture. We need to understand what are the cultural values and norms. Are we really focused in on behaviors that support one another? We're going to finish, when we finish this conversation, on one overriding cultural value, and that is the one of continuous improvement. Are we helping each person, each division, constantly looking at what it's doing and asking the question, how can we be better in the next evaluation period so that we're pulling together as a better strategic team and a cultural team that's constantly onboarding people quickly. Google has a new book out, you may have heard about it, called Google Works. And what's interesting about it is the comment is made is that more money is going into recruiting, even though they have phenomenal capability of recruiting people, because they realize if they recruit the right people, then they have to spend less money on onboard training. And I think that is one of the conflicts a lot of companies run into. How much energy do we put into training people to reach the standards we want, when the reality of it is it's about people's attitudes and how they fit into the culture that's going to determine whether they succeed. So what you really want to do is hire the right people and then provide them with a supportive culture to improve on an ongoing basis. And so the critical part that we're going to leave you with today is a tool. And it's a conceptual tool because actually most of you may not be large enough to buy the tool that originally started all of this, but it's a management accountability system which allows each person to really understand, are they aligned with their culture? Are they following the individual and team strategic activities? Are they doing the right thing for leadership, hiring the right people, training them, incorporating them, advancing them, promoting them, and dealing with the VUCA world that we deal with so often, which is volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, which is what leaders have to work with, and constantly, as I said, seeking continuous improvement. So I'm going to walk you through 10 steps that you might use to be able to achieve all of this. And this is kind of a guideline of the 10-step process, and we'll go over it. It's understanding the company, the alignment, figuring out what is your commanding strategy, what gives you a sustainable ability to be ahead of your competitors, What are the traits people need for success? What are the expectations for performance? How do you actually evaluate that? How do you actually evaluate the criteria that you want to use to judge them, and how can you do it objectively so you can really help people wanting to improve better? And what's the focus on continuous improvement mean, and how might you incorporate that into an accountability system, provide the support? And the ultimate one, and I like to end with celebrating achievement, is because everyone needs to celebrate. We all need to know we're winning teams and we're moving to the next level, but learn how to do that. So let's start off with some terms. Again, I'm a teacher, so I kind of always focus on it. What's your vision? Your vision is the impact that the company wants to have on the world. Okay, it's kind of the headline of where you want to be in 20 years from now, 10 years from now. What's the change that you've made in the world? So when Starbucks first started, it looked at the world and it said people talk about coffee, and they talk about it generally at home and in the office, but there's no one place where they can go just for the coffee, but incorporate that part of their personal life and their business life together. Hence the stores came up. And as we all know, if you walk by a Starbucks store at 8:39 in the morning, there's a line very often going out the door for it. It's accomplished that. Now, once it's achieved that, it can then expand beyond it, as it has by licensing internationally to raise money for opening stores internationally, but also licensing its products and services in a way that you can now buy Starbucks. You can get Starbucks coffee in restaurants, on airports. You get it in ice cream, etc. So the vision can change from just being a third place to being a way of life for people, understanding quality and understanding they're giving back to the community, because they're also dealing with growers who are growing coffee beans and people who are working with it. The mission is more on the employee side. It's about, what do I get up every morning to do that's going to help our customers feel great about us? So everybody who gets up in the morning, a barista knows that their job is to get up and early, maybe 4 or 5 in the morning, get in there, make the coffee, make the place clean, make it exciting, and make people feel well greeted at 7, 8, 9 in the morning when they're starting their days, so that they have a great experience all the time. It's awesomeness. That's their mission. That's the mission overall. Each of the individual strategic elements are below that and fit into it. So the goals that companies set, we'll talk about SMART goals, are part of the mission, how each one accomplishes their goal. The strategy, I love this phrase, it's a winning formula. It's how do we win? How do we use those internal capabilities, the strengths of our people, our ability, if you're Walmart, for example, as a strategy, it's called the opportunity loop. How do we go to our suppliers and constantly get them to drop their prices, so that we can drop our prices to our customers even more? So if it's a 5-cent drop, we might drop our price by the supplier. It might be a 7, 8 cents drop to the customers. Why? Because they know that if you can drop the price enough, then more people will buy it and you make it up on the volume. It's understanding the unique buying experience that each person has to have. And that means hiring the right people, building the right systems that allow you to take your core competency and provide it in a way that's really going to meet needs. And that strategy changes over time. Think about Best Buy as an example. Best Buy was a retail store, and people came there to buy, and then the internet came, and a couple of years ago, they got clobbered around Christmas when they discovered people were doing e-shopping. E-commerce was the way people were buying. And then they looked at it and they realized it wasn't just e-commerce was a place of buying, but it becomes now a place where people do their shopping. And what they very often will do is go to a store to do showroom shopping, and then from there make the decisions of what to buy, because the differences between the stores and e-commerce was substantial. And so they changed their strategy. So your strategy is, how do you provide a unique experience that the customers want, and as the world changes, you need to change. And they had a much more successful Christmas season this current year because they've begun to do that. You can watch that stock price over the last 2 years, which has been up over 50%, because they're figuring out how to keep their prices low in the stores and allow people to get the information and improve customer service. All elements internally aimed at keeping their market share and growing it because they're really the last of the big boxes that specialize in what they do. The culture, we all know the culture because we all feel it. It's the behaviors, the norms, the values, the actions, the beliefs. It's how we feel about serving customers. Do we really care about them or not? How do we care about our products? So think about it. When Toyota develops a car company and it develops a structure in which it says we're going to put on every assembly line a ripcord that anybody can use anytime you spot what you think is a defect, it's changed the culture. The culture is you're an expert on what may or may not work, and we'll defer to you, even if that means we're going to have to stop the assembly line. How does that differ from companies that, General Motors, et cetera, that don't have such processes and then go through literally millions and millions of recalls for all kinds of different problems that have occurred, because the answer is we don't want to know about the problems. It's a culture, the culture of doing what it takes to meet your needs. That's what it's about. And how you inculcate that is not top down, but bottom up. You need to get everyone to feel it and to bring people in. That's why very often culture starts at onboarding. Think about jury duty. It's a great example of a culture onboarding system. If you know yourselves and you ask other people, they'll tell you very often, I don't really want to be a juror. I'm taking time off from work. I don't really get paid, or maybe I do get paid. But the point is I can't get my work done, and it conflicts with what I think is important. And yet when we look at our other part, we all know we do want a jury of our peers. And we do want them to be fair, and we do want them to be impartial. And if you speak to jurors, remember I'm a lawyer, so I've kind of spent a lot of time looking at this issue when I got my degree in law and psychology. What it is there's an entire process of bringing people in. It's called socialization. So people who come in and don't really want to participate to start, learn to revere and have reverence for and respect for the actual legal system. And once they are on a jury, they treat it with tremendous seriousness because they realize it's important to do what they have to do. And so the culture there becomes one of first resistance and then acceptance and then pride in their work, because they've made a tough decision on someone's innocence or guilt or a fine or whatever the case may be. And so in each case, the culture becomes something we have to introduce to people, educate the people, and constantly reinforce with people. So you need to ask yourself, from a cultural point of view, what are our values? Okay, customer-centric. Are they really about the customer or not? Many of us hear things all the time when you call up for a service, especially cable services and phone services. Your call is important to us, and now you can wait 4 hours before someone picks up the phone. And then I'm going to transfer you to somebody else who has no understanding of who you are, and you start all over again, giving the same basic information you gave to the last 3 people. That is a culture that's not respecting the customer and could be changed by developing the right systems. It's clearly not customer-centric. It's more of let's just move the people down the line. The norms are the way in which the company explains this stuff to people every day, both its employees and its customers. So, for example, salesman of the year, salesman of the month, big difference. Salesman of the year applauds what you do once a year, one does it 12 times a year. That shows the norm of sales being very important, and the culture is important. When you have meetings and they take too long and no one shows up on time, again, the norm there of it's okay to come late leads to one which distracts and destructs the actual effective policies of the meetings, and then the meetings become a downward spiral. How you have a holiday party shows teamwork and caring. When a company creates a culture where you can dress up your cubicle any way you want to, or maybe have you bring in your pet, or have flex time, it's a culture that says we respect our people and we want to give them every opportunity to bring their personality in here, because if they do that, they'll be more respectful of their customers and what their differences are. And these practices become the behavior that we see all the time. So, for example, I've worked with a company that used to have an employee orientation for every new group they brought in, and then after many years they stopped it. And they brought me in at that point because their biggest problem was people were coming into the company, staying a little bit more than a year and leaving. And in investigating why, we discovered part of it was they didn't know where they could grow. It's a young workforce, which wasn't growing fast, so there was no place for them to rise. Their bosses were only 5, 10 years older than they were, so they couldn't actually move up that way. And so they decided the only way to survive economically was to leave the company and move to another company, when instead they could have changed it by doing that orientation, showing people that there are other departments they could work in, which is what we instituted as part of the system, and allow people to find out they have skills that they could buttress in the company and then move, not so much laterally, but kind of at a diagonal up to a different department, different structure, where they're using their core competencies as the basic skills, but what they're also able to do is to grow. And as a result, they stayed longer. What's also interesting is senior managers in the beginning were the only people allowed to do orientation. The change was middle managers who had this energy to grow and could address the growth issue with new employees became the new teachers of the program, and it became part of a massive super mentoring program we set up over 7 years, working with a company that services over 30,000 association members. What you need to do then is be very honest and accept the fact that you have competing values and strategies in your company. And not everyone agrees. And that's why you need to have people sit down and really take a look at it. Are we looking for speed, or are we looking for quality? Is it about an individual baseball player getting a hit, or trying to get a hit and constantly going for that home run to get that extra that extra home run? Or is it an RBI, getting the person on third to score so that you get the run? What is your quality? You can't do it all, and you have to make a decision. Do I want speed, or do I want quality? In fact, recently read a very interesting note about Google. So in its early stages of setting up Google AdWords, the observation was made that from the Google staff that people would like to have more options available, not just a page of 10, but a page maybe of 20 or 30 of options. So the question was, is that what really people want? More quality, in the sense of quantity here, of opportunities to find exactly what they're looking for. And so they did a number of focus group tests, with people who actually being given 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 to see what happens if they got more, what the reaction was. And it was very clear that the biggest issue was the more you displayed, the longer it took to come on. And people's patience for sitting beyond a certain amount of time wasn't there. And so while ideally they may want more, so the quality was higher through a larger quantity, people wanted speed. They wanted to get what they could get as quickly as they could. If it wasn't good enough, they could put another term in, but they didn't want to have to wade through the whole thing. So it was an issue where it was driven by increasing quality, but speed actually won out. Again, what's your cost and your reputation? When a company makes a decision to cut a corner, to drop out a part of its product, to deliver it late to save it a little money, what is it doing to its reputation? What impact is that having on it? Are you focusing on what you've done traditionally, or are you willing to be innovative? Are you willing to, in a sense, make changes in what you're doing and how you do it? People come in and respect tradition. Other people come in and respect innovation. And the two need to meet and acknowledge these are competing values. And where does the balance come from? And that decision from a culture point of view determines what your new strategy is going to be. Are you protecting what you're doing, or are you promoting new ideas? Are you focusing on local change or global change? Which is more important? Which is more important in terms of your PR and your investor relations, in terms of your workforce satisfaction, etc.? So just as a great example, Volvo, which is now a Chinese company, Geely owns them, has been moving its plants over the last few years to China, but watching its market share drop precipitously here in the United States. So it's just made a decision to open up a brand new plant. I think it's in South Carolina or Kentucky. I could be wrong. But in the south of America, south of the United States. Why? Because the answer is people want to buy from America. They want that feeling of this is made in America, and they'll feel more proud of that same product than importing it from China. So a local product, and there are many companies, WeatherTech, for example, with the mats that you put in cars are focusing on local as a way of getting to become a larger global company. Again, a trade-off that has to be made. And finally, seniority and merit. This is the classic issue. Are we rewarding people for merit or because they already have seniority? Again, the New York State, New York City union issues related to teachers is a classic illustration of this. We want experience, but keeping people who are inexperienced, not doing the right work. They're not inexperienced. They're just not performing the way they should, but they have seniority is winning over in some cases over merit. So you need to make those decisions. And so one of the ways to do it, it's called the competing values framework. It's one of the things we do here at Commanding Strategies to help people look at it, is try to see where is your company now? Where are you individually? What are the different dimensions that are going to focus on what you're doing? And how are you currently resolving, both consciously and unconsciously, these trade-offs? And what as a company, as a leadership, do you really want to do? Where do you really want to take it? So, for example, I might be struggling between giving people a lot of discretion and flexibility, but then I have a lot of loose cannons, so I might be reacting at the bottom level to stability and control. I might be focusing on, are we doing the right things for our market? And are we really meeting the growing needs of this market? Or internally, how am I handling what I do in here? What are we presenting? This is where the trade-offs come from. And so what you'll find is people actually fall into these different areas, and we can map where they are using the competing value framework. We can map where they want to be. And then the key is this transition from where you are to where you want to be and helping people do it. So you can see how important these questions are. Once you've figured out where you want to go, you not only want a strategy that's going to work, you want one that you can take and use on an ongoing basis to grow, because that makes it much more efficient and effective. So to use just as an example, Starbucks, we call this, by the way, a commanding strategy when it's sustainable over a long period of time and not just tactical. There are people who believe in this day and age with a VUCA world, you cannot have long-term sustainable strategies. Our belief is based on the value structure you've built, you can, and we call those commanding strategies. We'll talk in a minute how you do that. So here is Starbucks introducing itself, answering the question, how do we distinguish ourselves from other coffee outlets? Unique. It's a different way. Remember, you can't order large, small, and medium. It's got to be a venti if you want a large one. And thinking about new services which other companies wouldn't think about it. But how do I make it sustainable? Because the way to do that is to change the positioning in the mind of the customers, the vendors, and the employees. And so everything about what we do, from how we distribute, how we buy, how we select our coffee, how we service it. If you remember when Schultz took over, Howard Schultz took over as CEO again a few years ago, one of the things he realized is the culture had fallen apart in the company. People thought money was more important than providing high quality, and he literally closed every store down for a day so that they could all go back to the basics of learning the quality, and everyone understood the value of it, and it revitalized it. And as you've watched the stock price for the last few years, you see how they're growing. So it's an important quality that you want to focus in on. And as we'll talk about next week, looking at Dell Computer and TD Bank and Apple, how do they build commanding strategies? And we'll be focusing in on that. Second part is, the next part is leadership traits. The leader's role in trying to understand what our mission is, our vision of where we want to be, and the strategies that are going to help us get there, understand what they have to do as leaders to help the people perform the way they do. And so the first and most important part is clarity. It's got to be a really clear vision, mission, and strategy. It's clarity of purpose that helps you know what you're doing. And as a leader, it's one of the unique parts that we have here at Presentation Excellence. As you know, I also work with Vistage, which is 19,000 CEOs running companies between 5 million and $1 billion, is to recognize that we have to be role models. If we don't demonstrate our passion for our companies as a role model, we can't be the glue that ties together all of the people and all the divisions and all the departments and make the mortar that makes the bricks build the gigantic buildings that we're trying to do. And so we need to be role models as a very important part and demonstrate our passion every day. There's no question about it. When you listen to Howard Schultz again over at Starbucks, you get that, or Steve Jobs and Tim Cook now for Apple. The passion for their products and services are there. The key part is you don't want to make lots of changes. You want everything to be continuous improvement. And how do you do that? By setting reasonable expectations, inspiring the team, and offering mentoring services. The big thing is, for us, we do mentoring within companies. We do mentoring with internships. We believe it's a very important part of the Vistage Group. Concept is 2 hours of mentoring one-on-one with seasoned people like myself who can serve in that role, as well as the mentoring of another, let's say, 10, 12 different CEOs, all of whom have anywhere between 3 and 30 years experience and can use their expertise to do that. What's critical is holding people accountable, and this is a place where every company seems to have some struggles. How do we really hold people accountable for achieving the goals that we've set up? And we're going to talk about that. I'm going to share a model with you that you can use to give you an idea. Take full responsibility is critical. To be accountable means to take responsibility for your actions, but also understand that if you're not going to be classically traditional, in which case you're probably going to become obsolete, you have to encourage creativity and innovation to move to the next level. We had a phenomenal session a couple of weeks ago on creativity and innovation. It's an area that I specialize in personally, doing workshops and training programs and instituting innovation models so that people can do it on an ongoing basis. When we present at the end of all of these workshops, we will put them on our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to actually catch them over there. So yes, we do archive this and we do make it available at the end. You should definitely watch that if creativity and innovation is important to you. One of the issues, therefore, is being in holding people accountable is understanding what are the specific performance expectations that you have for each individual and each team. It means you have to ask really tough questions. What's our sales volume? And is it what we want it to be? Are we achieving our goal or not? What are our profit margins? And the negatives are also part of all this. What defect rates do we have? What are recall rates? What are our chargeback rates if we're in a business where we're importing products and offering it to large discounters who will charge back if for some reason they can't make a profit on it? What does all this say about our brand and image and our value to both our customers, to our employees, and to our investors and our strategic partners? It's a very important part. You might want to be looking at accounts receivable outstanding as a specific way of measuring how well we're doing with collecting money or to inventory turnover. These are all things that are quantifiable. And so when people say, well, we can't really measure everything, I would disagree. We can measure every part of it. We can look at, I was just teaching this morning evaluation because it's my area of specialty too, to my class. I'm going through the fact that when you're looking at the sales pipeline, you're looking at going not just from leads to prospects who are relatively qualified to actual buyers and getting them to buy, but you really want to measure the end of this. How much repeat business do you get? How many referrals do you get? How many are fans going out of their way to let people know about it? All of which is measurable by a company that's working with its data. And so what you need to do within any part of your company, whether it's finance or sales or marketing, is really have specific criteria to measure what you're doing. So if you're marketing and you're using the internet, clearly it's the number of views that you have, the number of clicks, number of click-throughs, the number of purchases, number of abandoned cars, all of these carts that people are looking at. In a sales department, as I said, it could be looking at all of these numbers and asking the question, how much is it making a difference or not? One of the biggest problems in accountability for a department and for individuals, we don't put the numbers down, and as a result, we're not able to look at them. And understand our philosophy here at the Presentation Excellence Group and Commanding Strategies. It isn't about catching people not getting it right. It's about helping people improve by getting the support they need and making sure they have the skills and competencies to do it. That's the way people then go in with a positive attitude to get the difference. So just to give you an example, we have a Vistage member in the Midwest who, it's probably close to 10 years now, decided he needed to focus on his company in a new way and really hold people accountable. They're in the business of preventive maintenance for aerospace products like helicopters and planes and engines and things like that. And again, in a recession, if people can delay looking at preventive maintenance, it saves you money. But if something goes wrong, obviously there's a big cost. So you want people to focus in on it. And so he built a system which became known as Evaluate to Win, and then became known as Execute to Win, where people could evaluate how they are contributing to the strategic performance and the overall culture of a company. And what he did is he helped his people come up with objective standards to know exactly what they're doing and then give it a score from 0 to 10 or 1 to 10. So, for example, if I'm looking at performance instead of the traditional evaluation system that basically asks questions like, are you average, above average, below average, which is totally subjective because your average might be my below average. This allows us to sit down with someone and say, well, what do you think a 5 should be and what should a 10 be? And each dyad, each supervisor with each employee can look at those numbers and ask the question, what's the right way to do it? And then coming up with criteria, he came up with scores that sum it up. And you have scores for the cultural alignment, for strategic performance, doing your job right, and if you're a leader, for leadership. So just as an example, first question might be, if I'm going to come up with a way of measuring your alignment with the mission, is to ask a simple question. Can you articulate the mission verbatim? And in his case, I'm not telling you to do it this way, he gave people 4 points. It's real important because when I used to be the head of the International Association of Presentation Professionals, and we traveled around the country looking at companies, there was one company that prided itself on tremendous alignment, everyone knowing the values and the culture, etc. And we went to visit them on a site visit. I stopped an employee, which I was supposed to do, and asked questions. So tell me, what's your mission, your vision, and your strategy? He said, good, you should ask, let me tell you. And he walks me to his cubby hole, and he shows me the sheets on the screen, and then he reads them all. That's not really understanding them. Understanding it is knowing what you want to do and having it done well. And so in this particular case, Lee, who created Evaluate to Win, he used a criteria. If you get 4 points, if you can articulate the mission verbatim. If you can't and you get the general idea, maybe I give you 2 points. If you go, gee, I don't know, our mission is to show up every morning and get a check at the end of the week. Wrong. That would be a 0. But then here was the beauty of it, saying, okay, when you sit with your manager and you say you really know the mission, can you give me 3 examples of how you did it? So, for example, if I'm working with a client that has to have a part repaired, I can sit down and walk through options. Say, look, you can put this piece in for $10, and it'll last you probably a year. You can put the second piece in. It'll cost you $20, but it might last you 5 years. Now, yes, you're going to save money over 5 years, but I have to share with you the real issue is if every time you have to come in and check it each year, you're going to find out that you have downtime, and that's got an additional cost beyond the parts. You might want to think about that. And having people understand that may allow them to be able to help people make the best decisions for their products and services, which is why this company, in part through this accountability system, was growing over 20% per year last time I checked for 7 consecutive years through the worst recession that we've had in years. And so finding 3 examples of how you've gone out of your way to accomplish the mission might be a way to achieve your points of 10. If I'm using a different way of looking at strategic performance, I might say, how well are you selling, and give it a rating. If you meet your quota, you get 9 points. I'm always looking for better, so 10 means you beat it. If you came below it, well, by 10%, you got 6 out of the 10 points. If you missed it by 20, you get 4 out of the 10 points. But if you're below that, maybe you shouldn't be working here. Maybe the answer is 0 for that. And let's have this conversation. Now, there may be an extenuating circumstance, in which case continuous improvement says, we'll look at it next. But as you can see, through constant conversations between every supervisor and every employee, we can not only agree on what the standards should be, okay, what is your sales volume quota, but also whether you're meeting it and how we can help you do better. And so this would be an example of how Evaluate to Win actually works. And you can see every employee has 3 scores: alignment, performance, leadership. And as a person who's looking at the entire company, I can take a look at it and I can see here the different things. So the green means these people are in the best quadrant. They're doing high culture and high performance. This person over here is very poor, both in culture and performance. These people differ, and these are the ones that for most managers we spend a lot of time looking at. Here's someone who's very well aligned in terms of what they were doing, high alignment, but low performance. And the question is why? Maybe they just don't have the skills to do what they're doing. Whereas this person here is a great performer, but not very well aligned. So we may find out that violates the culture, sexual harassment, can't keep an assistant, doesn't help other people, etc., and becomes a potential cancer to the company. This person may just need to be transferred to a different department or given more skills. This person, on the other hand, may be a cancer. So mapping it and thinking it through allows you to pick the right people and grow them to the place you want. And as I said, the key to all of this is a focus on continuous improvement. Most people's objections to evaluation and being held accountable for it is the fact that they feel they're going to be caught with what I'm going to call the gotchas. Gotcha doing something wrong and you lose it, and as a result of the lost rating, you're not going to get the raise or something you're looking for. First of all, this isn't tied to raises, and most of the companies who use it, it's purely about performance. Instead of doing it once a year, it's used as often as it can help. In fact, I'm rather radical on this one. I think every employee at some level does this every month. Obviously, the longer you're there, you can do it maybe every quarter. But life changes, work changes, projects change, and not everything's equal. And the more often you do it, the supervisor-employee conversation can focus on continuous improvement. What courses should you take? Whatever you should do. I just have a client that I provide coaching to, whose company grew 100% last year. And for the first time ever, he said, maybe I need greater skills. Should I take an executive MBA program? Should I take a real MBA program? Should I join Vistage and learn from all those experts? What do you think? And we went through the pluses and the minuses on it. But he said, I'm now at a stage where I really recognize I, as a leader, need to improve my skill set. And so part of that is getting that additional training in where it is. And we're learning increasingly through gamification that if you engage people in simulations, they learn best. It's the behavior that learns. It's not theory or anything like that. It's really being able to do it. If you want people to be creative for innovations, which is the goal, you need to follow different approaches. One is extra time. Remember 3M, Intuit, Google will give you 15 to 20% of the time to work on any project you think is consistent with the company's goals that fit there. There are other people who institute more ideas. Again, we covered this in our innovation workshop where, for example, RightSight's a software company that actually builds a system, and it's called the stock market of ideas. And it's just a fascinating way to do it and get people to actually bet on those ideas they like. And they produce the ideas using the software, not even for their own industry, but for others, which were very profitable. And it's a different way of doing it. If you haven't read, I just finished it this weekend, Accelerate by John Kotter. He deals with this whole question of how do you maintain at the same time a creative, innovative group while still running an operational company, because clearly any distractions to the current inertia to produce your products on time in a positive way could be destructive and distractive. And while he's right on that, he offers an interesting model for doing it. In many ways, it's similar for those of you who remember Ford in the 1980s. Quality is job one, and they talked about quality circles. We've been advocating for 15 years having innovation circles. He's institutionalizing at a slightly different and higher level, but focusing on the process by which it works. And it's a great system to do. If you're not innovative enough, it might be something to really read and talk about. And finally, the ultimate culture is a reward for people doing their job right. Make people feel great about what they've achieved. Celebrate the moments to encourage others. As I said, leaders are always role models, and every employee, as they accomplish what they do, become a role model. And it becomes a really important process for what you're doing. And so you want to try to achieve success and make people feel good and feed it back to reinforce the culture. So it's not just about the person, it's really about the culture. So put it all together. How do you get success? Well, answer first here is you really need to be clear what your business strategy is. What in the external environment can you provide to customers in a profitable way that really uses your core competencies the best? Second, what kind of culture do you need to support people when they're doing that? because if they support them, then they're actually going to maximize the results. And then you have to define and share the strategic and cultural elements with everyone else in the company. That's the key thing for leaders. We do not believe in management retreats. Management should never retreat. Management should always be moving forward. So we call them strategic leadership advances, because you're advancing to the next stage and the next level and knowing what you're doing. And at that, everyone walks away with a concrete plan of what to do and how to do it, phasing in getting the current job done and incorporating the new changes that are necessary. And then it filters down from leaders to each dyad, every member. So you have someone on the assembly line working with their person above them, who's their supervisor, in terms of making sure that expectations are clear for what to do and are evaluatable in an objective way, so that you can look at it and answer the question, how do I get better? How do I do it more? This objective scoring system is actually the greatest tool for success, because it allows everyone to standardize around some numbers that really work and be able to measure, I'm getting better. And it really makes a difference. It also makes it very easy to find out when there's a problem and what to do about it. I work with a lot of Vistage members, and we have this kind of inside joke that we're all too fast in hiring and too slow in firing. And the single biggest reason for slow in firing is people go, I don't really know whether he or she is the problem, or our systems are not enabling them to succeed. Well, that's really the important part in here. Objective numbers focused on continuous improvement solve that problem at all levels, because you know exactly what you're going to do. And then ultimately celebrate the achievement, your 20% CAGR, your growth every year at that rate or higher. My Vistage members grew last year on average over 25%. Celebrate those achievements and then just plan for more tomorrow, because that's really what success is all about. And with that, I want to thank you. You can learn more about what we do with Commanding Strategies, or Evaluate to Win, Eval to Win, I should say. That's our version of this, to be able to show people how it works. You're welcome to go to those websites and see it. You're welcome to email me at either one to get more information and learn what we do. And the question that was asked before, will a recording of this be available? Yes, at the end of the series, the whole thing is put on YouTube. On our channel, and we'll send out a notice to everybody where it is. You should also be subscribing to the Presentation Excellence newsletter, because all the activities of the group are in there, and it gives you the links to all of the websites. I'll add one more thing, because I just finished working on the next newsletter, and when this series is over, we'll start planning the next one. People we have now flying in from all over the country when they're in New York, if they can, to do it. And what we do is we provide an opportunity for people to ask the kinds of questions they need that are very tactical as well as strategic to answer them. Question asked, is there a way to print the slides? If you send me a private email, we'll send you something that you can have. We don't provide the presentation, obviously, for other reasons. Oh, the question I was driving at tactical is, we're looking at new topics for this fall 2015 series, which will be announced end of August, beginning of September. We try to make Labor Day our cutoff to announce it and have everybody set up. And again, we'll do somewhere between 8 and 12 webinars. If there's a topic we didn't cover this cycle that you would like us to see cover, send us an email on it. If you have someone you'd like to recommend on it, that's fine. But we'll try to do it. We try to give some of the best ones that we find all the time, like on presentations and how to present to boards and how to win deals, to strategy, to culture, to innovation and leadership. We try to deal with those kind of themes all the time. If there are any additional questions, I will take them. We're almost out of time. I want to remind you that next week we will focus on commanding strategies. So rather than this overview of success that we've provided with you today, we're going to focus on what makes for a sustainable competitive advantage, which we call a commanding strategy, and how you can get it. And I'll just give you the secret ingredient. It's leveraging the weakness of your competitors, what they think is a strength, by the way, but it's really a weakness, to give you that extra advantage. That's the key, and that's what we'll do. Our three remaining topics after that are on negotiations, get what you want, key negotiation strategies and tactics. Obviously very important in every part of your personal life and your business. For those people who are doing leases right now, we've run into that at this point for some reason. It's a great topic. Rainmaking, again, one of the unique roles of a leader is to bring new, larger clients to the table, and that's rainmaking. We'll talk about referral marketing and rainmaking. And lastly, enabling your next gen leaders to meet tomorrow's challenges will be our final topic. We're very big on finding a way to help people. For those of you who have a lot of myths about millennials and how different they are from everybody, they're increasingly being discovered by the large institutions like Deloitte or IBM as myths. Millennials really are very much in the middle of where everybody else is. So the old issues about knowing how to be a great leader are probably what we'll focus on, and we focus on for what we call the top 5 A's, and we'll focus in on that. So with that, I want to thank you for attending. We're glad that you were able to help you, and if you have any additional questions, feel free